Captain Sarah Chen felt the ship shake around her as another alien weapon hit their hull. The bridge lights flickered and went out for 3 seconds before the emergency power kicked in. Red warning lights bathed everything in an angry glow. "Hull breach on Deck 7, reported Lieutenant Torres from his station. "We've lost main engines, and life support is failing in sections 4 through 6. Sarah gripped her command chair as the ship lurched again. Through the main view screen, she could see 3 alien vessels moving closer. Their sleek, silver hulls gleamed in the light of the nearby star. The Zalani Empire ships looked like dangerous fish swimming through space. "How many crew members are still alive?" Sarah asked. 847, including ourselves," Torres replied. His voice was steady, but Sarah could see the fear in his eyes. The Times, Indomitable Times, had been on a routine patrol mission near the edge of human space. They were supposed to check on the mining stations in the Kepler 442 system and then return home. Instead, they had run into a Zalani hunting pack. The Galactic Council had been clear about their rules. Humans were new to space travel. They had only been flying between stars for 200 years, which was nothing compared to the thousands of years the other species had been exploring the galaxy. The Council expected humans to stay in their small corner of space and not cause trouble. But the mining stations were in human territory. Sarah had every right to be here. "Captain, they're sending us a message," called out Communications Officer Park. "Put it on screen." The alien face that appeared was typical Zalani, tall and thin, with pale blue skin and large black eyes that seemed to look right through her. The creature's mouth was too wide for its face, filled with sharp teeth that showed when it spoke. "Human vessel, you have violated Council space. Surrender immediately, or we will destroy you." Sarah stood up. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Terran ship Times Indomitable Asterisk. We are in human territory conducting legal operations. You are the ones who have violated our space." The alien's mouth stretched wider in what might have been a smile. "Humans have no territory. You are primitive creatures who barely deserve to fly among the stars. Surrender now." "We are conducting legal patrol operations under Earth authority," Sarah repeated. "Stand down and withdraw from human space." The transmission ended. A few seconds later, the ship shook again as more weapons fire hit them. "Captain, we can't win this fight," Torres said quietly. "Our weapons are having no effect on their shields. And we're outnumbered 3-1. Sarah looked around the bridge at her crew. These were good people. They had families back on Earth, dreams, lives they wanted to live. She could not let them die for nothing. "Open a channel to the lead ship," she ordered. "Channel open, Captain." "Zalani vessels, this is Captain Chen. We surrender. We are shutting down our weapons and dropping our shields. We request treatment according to the Galactic Conventions for prisoners of war." The alien face appeared on screen again. This time its smile was even wider. "Surrender accepted. Prepare to be boarded." Within an hour, Sarah and her entire crew were in chains aboard the lead Zalani ship. The aliens had destroyed the Times, Indomitable Times, after taking everything useful from it. Now, Sarah sat in a cold metal cell with her senior officers, waiting to see what would happen next. "Captain, what do you think they'll do with us?" asked Torres. "According to galactic law, we should be held as prisoners of war until there's an exchange or the war ends," Sarah replied. "We're protected by the conventions." But even as she said the words, Sarah felt a cold fear growing in her stomach. The way the Zalani had smiled at them was not the look of someone planning to follow the rules. Days passed. The humans were given just enough food and water to stay alive. They were not allowed to communicate with Earth or with each other except during the brief times they were let out of their cells for exercise. Finally, they were brought to a large chamber filled with cameras and recording equipment. Sarah realized with growing horror what was about to happen. A Zalani official read from a long document in their harsh, clicking language. Then a translator spoke in English. "The Galactic Council finds these humans guilty of violating Council space and threatening the peace of the galaxy. The sentence is death, to be carried out immediately as an example to all species who would challenge Council authority." "Wait," Sarah shouted. "We are prisoners of war. You cannot execute prisoners of war under galactic law. The official looked at her with those cold black eyes. The Galactic Council makes the law. And the Council has decided that humans need to learn their place. They forced Sarah and her crew to their knees in a long line. The cameras recorded everything as the Zilani soldiers raised their neural disintegration weapons. Sarah knew that this footage would be broadcast across the galaxy as a warning. "Tell Earth," Sarah said, looking directly into the main camera. Her voice was steady and strong. "Tell Earth we kept our oath." The weapons fired. 847 human lives ended in seconds, their bodies turning to dust that scattered across the cold metal floor. The footage reached Earth 72 hours later. President Martinez was in a meeting about trade agreements when General Harrison burst into the room without knocking. The old soldier's face was white with rage. "Mr. President, you need to see this immediately." They watched the execution footage in complete silence. When it ended, Martinez felt something break inside his chest. These were not just soldiers. They were people. They were his people. "How many?" he asked quietly. 847, sir, including Captain Chen." Martinez nodded slowly. Then he picked up his phone and called the heads of every nation on Earth. "Gentlemen, ladies, we have a situation. I'm invoking Protocol Omega. Every military force on this planet now answers to one command. We are going to war. Within hours, every space dock, every factory, every resource on Earth was being turned toward one single purpose. The Galactic Council had made a mistake. They had thought humans would be afraid. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The Galactic Council expected Earth to send messages asking for talks. They expected humans to beg for mercy or offer tribute. They expected fear. Instead, every human ship in space went silent. Ambassador Vexhai of the Zilani Empire stood before the council chambers, his pale blue skin gleaming under the soft lights. Around him sat representatives from 11 other species, all much older and supposedly wiser than the humans. "The execution was broadcast as ordered," Vexhai reported. "Surely the humans will now understand their place in the galaxy." Elder Morteth of the Vorthak delegation shifted uncomfortably in his floating chair. His species had been part of the council for 3,000 years, and something about this situation felt wrong to him. "Ambassador Vexhai, have the humans responded to our message?" "Not yet, Elder, but they will. All species do when faced with council authority." What the council did not understand was that humans were different from every other species they had ever encountered. While the Zilani had evolved on a peaceful world where the biggest danger was running out of the sweet fruit that grew everywhere, humans had evolved on Earth. Earth was what the rest of the galaxy called a death world. The weather changed without warning. Earthquakes could destroy entire cities. Volcanoes could block out the sun for years. Ice ages came and went. Diseases spread that could kill millions. And everywhere, always, there were predators. For millions of years, humans had survived by working together, by being smarter than their enemies, and by never giving up. When faced with impossible odds, humans did not surrender. They adapted. Admiral Marcus Rodriguez stood in the newly built command center, deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. Around him, screens showed every human ship, station, and colony in known space. 3 days ago, he had been Captain Rodriguez. Now he commanded the largest military force humanity had ever assembled. "Report," he said to Colonel Zhang, his chief of staff. "All civilian ships have been recalled to Earth, sir. We have 8,000 vessels of various sizes now under military control. The asteroid mining stations have stopped mining and started building weapons. Luna Base is producing ammunition around the clock." Rodriguez nodded. "What about the generation ships? The Times New Horizon ***, Star Pioneer ***, and Times Hope's Dreamtimes have all changed course. They're heading back from the outer colonies. Each ship carries 50,000 civilians, but they're also mobile cities with full manufacturing capabilities." On the other side of the galaxy, the council was beginning to realize that something was very wrong. "Elder Morteth, we have lost contact with our listening posts in human space." reported a young Vorthak intelligence officer. Lost contact? What does that mean? They have gone silent, Elder. All 17 posts, at exactly the same time. Elder Morteth's multiple eyes blinked in sequence. Send ships to investigate. But the ships never reported back. The humans had spent the last 200 years exploring space, but they had also been preparing for war. Not because they wanted war, but because they knew that in a galaxy full of unknown species, conflict was inevitable. Every human ship had hidden weapons. Every human station could be turned into a fortress. Every human colony had underground bunkers and emergency supplies. This was not paranoia. This was survival instinct earned over millions of years of evolution. Dr. Elizabeth Carter stood before the assembled leaders of Earth in the emergency session of the United Nations. She was Earth's leading expert on alien psychology, and what she had to say was not comforting. The Galactic Council sees the execution of our people as a simple message, she explained. To them, it was like stepping on an ant to warn other ants. They do not understand what they have done. President Martinez leaned forward. Explain. Every species in the Council evolved on what they call garden worlds. Places where food was plentiful, predators were rare, and cooperation was easy. They created the Council through negotiation and compromise. War, to them, is a last resort that follows specific rules. And humans? We evolved in hell, Mr. President. For us, war is not politics by other means. War is survival. And when our survival is threatened, we do not follow rules. We win. The Council finally sent a message to Earth 5 days after the execution. Ambassador Vexhai stood before the cameras in his finest robes, confident that his words would bring the humans to their knees. People of Earth, the Galactic Council offers you one chance to avoid further bloodshed. Withdraw all human presence from disputed space. Pay tribute of 1 million tons of refined metals annually. Accept Council oversight of your government. Do this, and no more of your people will die. The message was received on Earth 12 hours later. Admiral Rodriguez sat in his command chair, looking at the alien on his screen. His face showed no emotion as he recorded his reply. I am Admiral Marcus Rodriguez, commander of the Terran Defense Force. I have a message for the Galactic Council. Also cading this. He paused, thinking of Captain Sarah Chen. She had been his roommate at the academy 20 years ago. They had studied together, trained together, dreamed together about exploring the stars. You executed 847 prisoners of war in violation of your own laws. You broadcast their deaths as entertainment. You expect us to be afraid. All. Rodriguez leaned forward, his eyes hard as steel. You made a mistake. You showed us that you are not civilized beings following civilized rules. You are predators who respect only strength. So let me be very clear about what happens next. He stood up, and behind him appeared the image of Earth, surrounded by thousands of ships. We do not negotiate with war criminals. We do not accept tribute demands from murderers. We do not bow to those who kill the innocent. The camera pulled back to show the massive command center, filled with humans working at thousands of stations, coordinating the largest military operation in human history. You wanted to send a message to the galaxy about what happens to those who challenge the Council. Consider your message received. Now let us send our reply. The transmission ended. Within hours, human ships began appearing at the edge of Council space. Not the exploration vessels or traders the aliens were used to seeing. These were warships, armed and armored, moving in formations that spoke of grim purpose, but the Council was not worried. Humans had only been in space for 200 years. What could such a young species do against the combined might of 12 ancient civilizations? They were about to find out. The first human attack did not come where the Galactic Council expected. Admiral Kethvar of the Council Defense Fleet had positioned his ships around major military bases, expecting the humans to attack with their small fleet in a direct assault. It was how civilized species fought wars. You gathered your forces, announced your intentions, and engaged in honorable combat. Humans, it turned out, had never been civilized. Communications specialist Zara Okafor crept through the ventilation system of Council Relay Station Gamma 7. She had been crawling through the narrow metal tunnels for 6 hours. breathing recycled air, and fighting off claustrophobia. Behind her, 3 more humans followed in single file. The relay station orbited a gas giant in the Arcturus system, far from any military bases. It was protected by automated defenses and a small crew of technicians. The Council had never imagined that anyone would be crazy enough to attack such a target. They had not met humans before. Zara reached the central hub and carefully cut through the air vent cover with a molecular cutter. She dropped silently into the main communications center, where 2 Zelani technicians sat at their control boards, unaware of danger. Her team had studied Zelani anatomy for months. They knew exactly where to strike to cause unconsciousness without permanent harm. The technicians dropped without a sound. Team Alpha in position, Zara whispered into her comm unit. Across 17 star systems, similar teams were moving into position. They had traveled hidden in cargo containers, maintenance pods, and supply shipments. Some had been in place for weeks, living on emergency rations and waiting for the signal. Admiral Rodriguez watched from his command center as green lights appeared on his tactical display. Each light represented a critical Council communication relay, supply depot, or logistics center, not military targets. Infrastructure. All teams report ready, Admiral. Colonel Zhang reported. Rodriguez thought of Captain Chen's final words. Execute Operation Sledgehammer. Across the galaxy, human strike teams moved simultaneously. They were not trying to capture territory or destroy fleets. They were cutting the nervous system of the Council war machine. On Relay Station Gamma 7, Zara and her team worked quickly. They downloaded all communication logs, planted virus programs in the computer systems, and set charges that would destroy the station's transmitters. Then they retreated through the same vents they had used to enter. The station would not explode dramatically. Instead, it would simply stop working. The technicians would wake up to find their equipment dead, and their computers filled with messages in Earth languages. Elder Morteth received the first reports 6 hours later. His assistant's voice shook as she read from her datapad. Elder, we have lost contact with Supply Depot Tango 12 inches, the Vega system. Their computers appear to have been infected with some kind of virus. The message just says, for Captain Chen, in 17 human languages, send a repair team. Elder, we also lost contact with relay stations Gamma 7, Delta 3, and Alpha 15. And Supply Depot Whiskey 9. And the orbital refinery at... The list went on and on. 17 targets hit simultaneously across Council space. No civilians killed, but billions of credits worth of infrastructure disabled. More troubling were the messages left behind. Each facility had been tagged with the same phrase. For Captain Chen and the 847. How did they coordinate attacks across such distances? Elder Morteth demanded. His military advisor, a grizzled Korthani general, looked uncomfortable. Elder, we believe they used our own communication networks against us. They must have been planning this for months. Months? The execution was only 1 week ago. No, Elder. I think they have been planning for war since the day they joined the galactic community. This level of preparation, this coordination, they were ready for this. Thanks for watching. And also with one, on Earth, Admiral Rodriguez implemented what he privately called the Chen Doctrine, named after Sarah Chen. It was simple and ruthless. Council forces that surrendered were treated with honor, and according to galactic law. Council forces that resisted were destroyed completely. The first test came at a Council military depot in the Proxima system. Commander Lisa Park led a squadron of 12 human destroyers against the facility, which was protected by automated defenses and a small garrison. Attention Council forces, she broadcast on all frequencies. This is Commander Park of the Terran Defense Force. You have one chance to surrender. Lower your shields and prepare to be boarded. The response was a barrage of plasma fire from the depot's defense turrets. Commander Park's face went cold. All ships, execute Pattern 7. No survivors. The human ships moved in a way that confused the depot's computers. Instead of attacking in formation, each ship followed its own path, weaving between the defense turrets like dancers avoiding obstacles. They used the depot's own structure for cover, ducking behind sensor arrays and communication towers. When the humans fired back, they targeted not the weapons, but the power generators that fed them. Within minutes, the depot was defenseless, but the humans did not stop there. They systematically destroyed every building, every landing pad, every piece of equipment. Then they broadcast a message to the galaxy. This depot chose to resist. This is what resistance earns you. Choose wisely. The psychological effect was immediate. 3 council installations surrendered within hours of receiving the message. Their crews were treated well, fed properly, and allowed to contact their families. But not all council forces were ready to surrender. The Zelani Empire, proud and arrogant, decided to make a stand. Fleet Admiral Vextor gathered 200 ships at the fortress world of Kepler 186. It was a massive military base, built into an asteroid, bristling with weapons and shielded by the most advanced technology the Council possessed. Admiral Rodriguez received the intelligence reports and smiled coldly. They want to make a stand? Perfect. Colonel Zhang, prepare the special packages. Sir, are you sure? The casualties will be enormous. The casualties to whom, Colonel? What the Council did not understand about humans was that they had been fighting wars for their entire history. They had developed tactics that other species found horrifying because other species had never faced extinction. The human fleet that appeared at Kepler 186 was smaller than expected. Only 50 ships against 200. Fleet Admiral Vextor was confident. Then the human ships did something impossible. They accelerated to ramming speed and aimed directly at the fortress. Are they trying to ram us? Vextor asked his tactical officer in disbelief. That would be suicide, but at the last moment, the human ships released their cargo. Dozens of small pods shot toward the asteroid base, moving too fast for the defense systems to target effectively. Inside each pod was not a bomb or a weapon. It was a human volunteer, wearing a combat suit and carrying enough explosives to level a city block. The pods struck the asteroid's surface and burrowed deep into the rock, using mining charges. Then the humans inside began working their way toward critical systems. Sergeant Maria Santos crawled through a tunnel her pod had blasted in the asteroid. Behind her, the tunnel was collapsing, but she did not need to go back. Her job was simple. Reach the main power core and destroy it. She had volunteered for this mission knowing she would not survive. But her daughter would grow up in a galaxy where aliens did not execute human prisoners for entertainment. For Captain Chen, she whispered, and set off her charges. Across the asteroid fortress, 47 other human volunteers did the same. The massive base lost power, lost life support, lost everything. In the darkness and chaos that followed, the human fleet moved in to finish the job. Fleet Admiral Vextor found himself floating in an escape pod, watching his invincible fortress break apart. Around him, the survivors of his fleet were surrendering or fleeing. He received a transmission from the human commander. Admiral Vextor, this is Admiral Rodriguez. Your forces chose to resist. This is the consequence. But you personally are now a prisoner of war and will be treated according to galactic law. We are not like you. As rescue ships approached, Vextor realized the truth. The humans had not been trying to conquer the galaxy. They had been teaching it a lesson. The lesson was simple. There are some lines you do not cross, and if you cross them anyway, you face the consequences. The Galactic Council was about to learn that lesson very well. The war spread like fire across 3 galactic arms. Elder Morteth sat in his private chambers aboard the Council flagship, staring at reports that made no sense. In 3 months of fighting, the humans had destroyed or captured over 400 Council installations. They had done this with a fraction of the forces the Council commanded. How? He whispered to the empty room. The answer came in a message from General Cothrain, the Council's most experienced military commander. Elder, the humans do not fight like any species we have encountered. They do not seek to hold territory. They do not try to capture our ships intact. They simply destroy everything that resists them and move on. What General Cothrain did not say, because he could not bear to admit it, was that the humans were winning because they were willing to do things that civilized beings found unthinkable. Captain James Mitchell piloted the cargo ship times Wanderer times toward the Council supply convoy. His ship looked harmless. Just another merchant vessel carrying goods between systems. The Council ships barely noticed him. That was a mistake. Inside the Times Wanderer * cargo hold was not trade goods, but 40 tons of antimatter contained in a magnetic field generator powered by the ship's reactor. When the field collapsed, the explosion would equal a small star going nova. Captain Mitchell was one of 800 volunteers who had signed up for Project Final Answer. They were all people who had lost family or friends in the war. They all understood that this was a one-way mission. This is Captain Mitchell to all Council ships. I carry a message from Earth. You executed our people in violation of galactic law. Now you face the consequences. He triggered the detonation sequence. The convoy of 12 ships and 10,000 Council personnel disappeared in a flash of light that could be seen from 3 star systems away. This was not an isolated incident. Across Council space, human merchant ships were suddenly revealing themselves as weapons. They struck supply convoys, isolated bases, and any Council ship that traveled alone. The Council called it terrorism. Humans called it war. But the most shocking revelation came when the humans revealed their biological warfare capabilities. Dr. Sarah Kim had spent her life studying alien biology. Before the war, she had worked to develop medicines that could help different species live together peacefully. Now, she used that same knowledge to create weapons. The virus she designed was elegant in its simplicity. It targeted the specific neural pathways that most Council species use to process their advanced technology. It did not kill, it did not even cause permanent damage. It simply made it impossible for infected aliens to interface with their own computer systems. The virus spread through the Council fleet's ventilation systems during what should have been a routine inspection. Within hours, Zelani technicians found themselves unable to read their own displays. Vorthok engineers could not operate their own machinery. Korthani pilots could not fly their own ships. The humans had turned the Council's technological superiority into a weakness. Admiral Rodriguez watched the reports coming in from across the galaxy. The Council was in full retreat. But they were not defeated yet. Intelligence suggested they were gathering their remaining forces at Zelani Prime, the capital world of their empire. Colonel Zhang, what's the status of Operation 847? Colonel Zhang pulled up the tactical displays. All ships are in position, Admiral. 847 vessels, just as you ordered. 1 for each prisoner they executed. And the special cargo? Loaded and ready, sir. Though I have to ask again if you're certain about this. The weapon. It's never been tested on this scale. Number C. 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 Number. Rodriguez nodded grimly. Captain Chen and her people deserve to see their home again. Since they can't, we'll bring a piece of home to their murderers. The human fleet that emerged from hyperspace above Zelani Prime was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. 847 ships of every size and class, from massive battleships to tiny fighters. Many were converted civilian vessels, armed with weapons that had been built in the asteroid factories. But what made the Council defenders truly afraid was not the size of the fleet. It was what the ships were doing. Instead of attacking the orbital defense platforms, the human ships began broadcasting on every frequency at once. The signal was the same thing over and over. The names of the executed prisoners: Sarah Chen, David Torres, Lisa Park, Miguel Santos. The list went on for hours as the human fleet maintained its position just outside weapons range. Emperor Zethai of the Zelani Empire watched from his palace deep underground. His military advisors surrounded him, all talking at once about defense strategies and evacuation plans. Silence, the Emperor commanded. What are they doing? Why are they just sitting there? Supreme Admiral Kexval studied the sensor readings. My Emperor, I believe they are waiting for something. But I cannot determine what. The answer came at exactly the same time as the execution had occurred 3 months earlier. The human fleet suddenly accelerated toward the planet, but they were not attacking the military bases or the orbital stations. They were heading directly for the capital city. "Shoot them down," Emperor Zethai screamed. The orbital defense platforms opened fire. But the human ships had been designed for this moment. They had studied every weapon the Council possessed, every defensive system, every possible countermeasure. The humans had not copied Council technology. They had designed weapons specifically to defeat it. EMP charges detonated throughout the orbital platforms, sending electromagnetic pulses that fried the circuits of every advanced system within range. The platforms went dark one by one as their own technology turned against them, but the humans still did not attack the population centers. Instead, Admiral Rodriguez's flagship descended through the atmosphere and landed in the Great Plaza outside the Emperor's palace. The ship's cargo bay opened, and out stepped 1,000 human marines in full combat gear. But they were not there to conquer the city. They were there to plant a tree. The tree came from Earth, from the same soil where Sarah Chen had been born. It was a small oak tree, the kind that could grow for centuries and provide shade for generations of children. The Marines worked quickly and efficiently, digging a hole in the plaza's expensive imported stone. They planted the tree carefully, adding earth soil around its roots. Then they placed a simple stone marker beside it. The marker read, "In memory of Captain Sarah Chen and the 847. They died far from home, so that others might live in peace." As the Marines worked, the rest of the human fleet was systematically destroying every government building, every military installation, every symbol of Council authority on the planet, but they did not touch hospitals, schools, or residential areas. The message was clear. This was not conquest. This was judgment. Emperor Zethai watched from his command bunker as the human fleet finished its work and departed. In less than 6 hours, they had turned the capital of the Zelani Empire into rubble. But they had left the population unharmed. The small tree stood in the center of the plaza, its leaves rustling in the artificial breeze created by the city's climate control systems. That night, something unprecedented happened. Zelani civilians began coming to the plaza to see the tree. Many brought flowers, which they placed around the stone marker. They had heard the stories of the executed prisoners, seen the broadcasts of their final moments. They were beginning to understand what their government had done. By morning, the plaza was covered in flowers from a dozen different worlds. Children who had never seen a tree before sat in its shade, reading the names carved into the marker. The Emperor emerged from his bunker to find his people weeping in the ruins of his empire. The Galactic Council had taught the humans about power. Now the humans had taught the galaxy about justice. The war was not over yet. But everyone, on both sides, knew how it would end. The Galactic Council collapsed on a Tuesday. Elder Morteth sat alone in his empty council chambers, looking out at stars that no longer belonged to the empire his people had built. The great circular table where 12 species had once debated the future of the galaxy was covered with surrender documents and requests for mercy. It had taken 6 months. 6 months for the humans to dismantle an empire that had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years. The end came not with a massive battle, but with a simple announcement broadcast on every communication channel in known space. Admiral Rodriguez appeared on screens across the galaxy, standing in front of a flag that showed a single blue planet surrounded by stars. Behind him were representatives from dozens of species, including many who had once served the Council. "The Galactic Council has ceased to exist," he announced. "In its place, we offer something new, something better." The Terra Accords were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of one powerful species ruling over others, every world would have a voice. Instead of tribute and submission, there would be trade and cooperation. Instead of execution for those who disagreed, there would be courts that followed actual laws. Most importantly, the execution of prisoners of war was declared the highest crime in the new galactic legal code. The punishment was exile to the empty space beyond the galactic rim, alone and forgotten. Not everyone accepted the new order immediately. 3 of the original Council species surrendered unconditionally within days of the announcement. The Vorthak, the Korthani, and the Malaxians had seen enough of human warfare to know that resistance was useless. 4 other species negotiated separate peace treaties. They agreed to follow the Terra Accords in exchange for keeping some of their traditional territories. The humans agreed, but with conditions. Any violation of prisoner treatment would result in immediate military intervention. The Zelani Empire fragmented into 12 independent systems as different regions decided they no longer wanted to be part of the same government that had started the war. Some allied with Earth. Others chose isolation. 2 species fled to the Galactic Rim rather than accept human authority. They were allowed to go, but their ships were tagged with tracking devices. If they ever returned to civilized space, they would face immediate arrest. Ambassador Sarah Kim, the former biological weapons expert, now served as Earth's chief diplomat. She stood in what had once been the council chambers, watching as representatives from 47 different worlds worked together to write a new constitution. The Vorthak delegate was working with a human lawyer to establish trade agreements. A former Zelani admiral was helping to design new peacekeeping protocols. 3 species that had been enemies for centuries were now sharing technology to solve medical problems. Dr. Kim called out Jen Tai, a young Malaxian who served as the new government's Secretary of Justice. "We have finished the memorial design. Would you like to review it?" Sarah looked at the holographic display that appeared above the table. It showed a massive structure built in the exact coordinates where the Times' indomitable times had been destroyed. The memorial was shaped like a tree, with branches that reached out toward stars named after each of the 847 executed prisoners. At the base of the memorial tree was a research station where beings from all over the galaxy could come to study ethics, law, and peaceful cooperation. The station's motto was carved in letters visible from space. "Never again." "It's perfect," Sarah said quietly, but the memorial was not the only change the humans had brought to the galaxy. Captain Elena Rodriguez, the admiral's daughter, stood on the bridge of the colony ship Times Captain Chen Times as it prepared to depart for unexplored space beyond the rim. The ship carried 50,000 volunteers from 23 different species, all seeking to build something new in the darkness between galaxies. "Captain, we have clearance for departure," reported her first officer, a former Zelani engineer named Kexhai. "Thank you, Commander. Take us out." As the ship entered hyperspace, Elena looked at the memorial tree growing smaller in the distance. Soon it would be invisible, but its meaning would travel with them. They would carry the message of the 847 to new worlds, new species, new possibilities. On Earth, Admiral Rodriguez stood in the Chen Institute for Galactic Ethics, looking at a wall covered with photos of the executed prisoners. Sarah Chen smiled at him from the center of the wall. Frozen in time but not forgotten. "Admiral," said Dr. Elizabeth Carter, who now served as the Institute's director. "We've received another request for assistance. The Andromedans have heard about the Terra Accords and want to establish diplomatic relations." Rodriguez nodded. "Send a ship. But remember the protocols. No human vessel travels alone, and every diplomatic mission includes medical and legal staff." The protocols existed because humans had learned the hardest lesson of all. Peace required constant vigilance. The Chen doctrine was now taught in schools across the galaxy. Mercy for those who surrendered, justice for those who chose evil, and absolute protection for those who could not protect themselves. The former Emperor Zethai sat in a small apartment on a human colony world, tending a garden of flowers from a dozen different planets. He was not a prisoner. He was not a slave. He was simply a being who had made terrible choices and was now learning to make better ones. Every morning he walked to the small park where a tree from Earth grew beside flowers from his homeworld. The marker still read, "In memory of Captain Sarah Chen and the 847. But now there were other markers too, placed by beings whose lives had been changed by their sacrifice. A Vorthak engineer had placed a stone there after designing a new type of medical scanner. A Korthani teacher had added a plaque after establishing schools that welcomed children from all species. A young Zelani artist had painted a mural showing different worlds joining hands among the stars. The tree had grown taller in the 5 years since the war ended. Its branches now provided shade for children who played games in languages from across the galaxy. Sometimes the children would ask Zethai about the war, about why the humans had fought so hard for people they had never met. He would tell them about Captain Chen's final words, "Tell Earth we kept our oath." He would explain how humans had honored that oath by making sure no one else would ever die the same way. But why did they plant a tree? The children would ask. Zethai would smile and point to the children playing in the shade, speaking languages their parents had never heard, sharing toys and stories and dreams. Because trees grow, he would say, trees make more trees. And someday, when we are all gone, the trees will still be here, reminding the galaxy of what we learned. The children would nod and return to their games, not fully understanding but somehow knowing that the tree was important. High above them, ships moved between the stars carrying trade goods and passengers, explorers and diplomats, students and teachers. The galaxy was more connected now than it had ever been under the Council. But it was also safer. In the shipyards above Earth, the last of the old warships were being converted into hospital ships and research vessels. The weapons that had brought down an empire were now tools for healing and discovery, but humanity had not forgotten the lessons of the war. Hidden in the asteroid belts and outer planets, new ships were being built. Not warships, but guardian vessels, ships that would watch and wait, ready to respond if anyone, anywhere, decided that some people did not deserve to live. The memorial tree on the ruined plaza of Zelani Prime had grown too, its roots reaching deep into alien soil, its branches stretching toward stars that now shone on a more peaceful galaxy. And sometimes, when the wind was right, visitors would swear they could hear voices in the rustling of its leaves, the voices of 847 souls who had died far from home, but whose sacrifice had brought the galaxy together. Their oath was kept, their names were remembered, their legacy would last as long as trees grew and stars shined. The galaxy had learned what humans had always known. Sometimes the price of peace is paid in war. But the goal must always be to ensure that future generations never have to pay that price again. Captain Sarah Chen would have been proud.